Hello everyone, welcome back to Parenting and Co-Parenting during COVID. I'm sure you pretty quickly realized that I'm not Brian or Monique. My name is Dom. I'm one of the attachment counselors here at St. Mary's, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about attachment, what attachment means, why it's important for your child, and what attachment can look like when you're co-parenting with someone else. We're also going to talk about the different hats that you wear as a parent, why each hat is important to your child, and how each hat can affect the development of your child's attachment relationship to you. Before we dive right into this, I do want to mention that everything that we're going to talk about today does apply to you and your co-parent, regardless of whether or not you're living with that person. I'll also say that this information is not 100% specific to COVID. However, being locked down with very limited resources, space, and with a very limited group of people can definitely put some strain on some relationships, whether that relationship is between you and your co-parent or between you and your child even. Stressful and changing situations like this can also change your relationships, sometimes for the better, sometimes not always so much for the better. Regardless, it is important to mention that your child's routine may have also been pretty significantly impacted during the closures and with everything going on with COVID. This can be really confusing and sometimes even scary for a child to have their routine disrupted so abruptly. As a result, your child is definitely going to need you to help them understand and cope with these changes and help them work with the feelings that they might be having as a result of the pandemic. And they are also probably going to need some support from you after the pandemic and once things start to kind of go back to normal. So those are the things that we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about throughout this video today. First of all, you guys are probably sitting there asking yourselves, why on earth am I talking to you guys about hats? When I'm talking about hats, I'm actually referring to the different roles that a parent can play any given day, and if I'm being honest, probably all day, every day. When you step into a different role as a parent, you're putting on a different parenting hat. I find that when I work with families on attachment, giving the example of hats instead of roles helps give parents a clearer idea of when they're stepping into a new role. When you kind of have that visual of what hat you need to be wearing for that moment, then you have an even better idea of how you need to be supporting your child with that need in that moment. How you respond to your child with different needs day to day is definitely a huge piece of how your child develops an attachment relationship to you, the parent. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that specifically a little bit later on today.
So Dom, what are some of the parenting hats that I'll be wearing?
So I'm sure that as a parent, you're pretty well aware of the fact that on any given day and at several points throughout the day, you can be a playmate, you can be a teacher, a nurse, a chef, a hairdresser extraordinaire, and an enforcer of rules. You name it, as a parent, I'm sure that you know you do it.
Why is knowing about the different parenting hats important for my child?
So I'm well aware that for some people, talking about hats can seem really silly. Let's be honest, I have no confusion around the fact that it seems silly. But when we break down the many different roles that a parent plays, it makes it a lot easier to see why each parenting hat is actually so important. So let's look at a couple examples of different hats that we wear. Teacher hat. So children are learning throughout their whole lives, and they learn in a variety of ways and from even more sources. They learn through play, they learn through social interactions, and they learn a whole lot from the adults around them most often. There are so many times throughout a child's life where you're going to have to teach them things. Let's think about, potty training, how to ride a bike, health, safety, hygiene. There's a lot to teach a child throughout his life, making it pretty clear why this role is such an important role. This is the playmate hat. Sometimes your child just needs you to play and interact with them. So when your child is a baby, maybe that just means some STEM time, exploring different toys, stuffed animals, things like that. Fast forward a little bit to when your child is a little bit older, maybe it's following their lead in some imaginary play or different games and activities, whatever playtime looks like. It's important to remember that children learn so much through play, and even though there's lots of opportunities to teach during play, you gotta just throw that teacher hat aside and really make sure that you're keeping that playmate hat on, as sometimes your child really just needs your company and your companionship. The chef hat. The chef hat means ensuring that your child gets as much nutrition as possible so that he can grow, meet his different milestones, and have the proper nutrients in his body for all the playing and learning, exploring, and growing, all the adventures that await him each and every day. Making sure that you're providing the proper fuel to your child so that he can do all these things every day absolutely is no doubt an important role. Now for the enforcer hat. Sometimes this hat can seem like a little bit of a drag. Maybe it's not everybody's favorite hat, but it is certainly an important hat to wear. Of course, parents always have to set limits and boundaries and enforce rules for their children to learn about health and safety, appropriate conduct for a variety of different social situations, and so that children have structure and routine, which is a pretty critical piece of their growth and development. This type of structure helps shape a child's social, physical, cognitive, language, and emotional development. So it really is an important hat, even if it might not necessarily be their or your favorite hat, but it is a hat worth noting for sure. So a couple things are probably happening right now. One of them being you're probably admiring my little hat buffet and my hat hair, but you're also probably wondering how attachment fits in with all these different hats. To better understand this, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what attachment is, who it's important for, and how it develops. So attachment is all about how your child sees you as a safe person who's there for them to help guide them through their life. Attachment is directly linked to a child's emotional development, and the attachment relationship begins pretty much at birth and actually even prenatally. Your child develops their attachment relationship to you as a direct result of you, the caregiver, responding consistently and warmly to their different needs. When you're meeting their needs with warmth and consistency, all of them, doesn't matter what the need is, even if you can't necessarily figure out exactly what that need is, when you're meeting them with warmth and consistency to try to meet their needs, this tells your child from an early age that there's someone there for them to keep them safe. As children and infants can't do this on their own, they really do rely on their parent or caregiver to help them with this. With this warm and consistent responding from the parent to a child's every need, over time, your child is going to learn who they can rely on, what different feelings mean, what different emotions mean, and how to regulate those emotions with help early on, and then as they grow, hopefully independently. As this goes on, they're ultimately going to learn about trust and healthy relationships with peers, partners, and family. So to be extra super duper clear about attachment, you, the parent, do not develop an attachment relation to your child. Rather, your child develops an attachment relationship to you as a result of how you're meeting their needs. A parent can absolutely be bonded to their child, but attachment is all about how the child feels about the parent. Again, not the other way around. For more in-depth information about the difference between attachment and bonding, and even more information specifically about attachment, you can absolutely check out the St. Mary's Facebook and YouTube channel for the Playing with Attachment program that runs on Mondays, and the final module of Transitions to Parenting, guest starring myself, yours truly, talking all about the ins and outs of attachment. So if you're looking for more information, those are the two places where you're going to get a more in-depth overview about attachment. Yes, there absolutely is an attachment hat, as being a child's attachment figure is a whole entire role in and of itself. And the attachment hat is actually the most important hat that you can wear. For when we're talking about the attachment hat, because it's so important, I'm going to wear the only hat that I have that is 100% different from the other hats, as demonstrated by the little Snoopy right here. So let's talk a little bit more about the attachment hat.
So how do I know when to put on my attachment hat?
That's an excellent question. So your baby or child is going to give you lots of hints as to when they need you to put your attachment hat back on, and maybe put your other hats aside for a little while. A solid giveaway for when your child needs you to put your attachment hat on is when she is sick, upset, or hurt. Now, I feel like sick and hurt are fairly obvious, so we're going to spend a quick second talking about upset. A baby or child can be upset for a number of reasons, including when she's sick or hurt, of course. But upset can be more than that. Upset can be a baby or a child needing food, being gassy, needing to be held by mom or dad, needing to explore their environment or surroundings, and maybe crying or fussing until they're given that chance. Upset can be hurt feelings or even feeling when their parent is upset. Children are very, very in tune with how their parents are feeling. So if you didn't know that, I hope that that's helpful because they can very much feel maybe how you're feeling. So I hope that's helpful for you. It is important to always try to meet their need. I know I said before a little bit early on that sometimes you're not always going to know exactly what that need is, so it might take you a little bit longer than you like to kind of figure that out. But even if you can't figure it out, you absolutely need to continue trying to respond with that warmth and consistency. When your child is sick, upset, or hurt, their attachment system is activated. When that system is activated, they need you, the parent, to respond to them every single time. When that system is activated, that's when you got to put your attachment hat, this beautiful hat, back on. When you put that hat on every time, those are the times when your child is going to learn who's there to keep them safe. And then throughout their life, it's going to shape how they develop their attachment relationship to you. When they need you, this is a really important part. So when they need you, whatever it is that they need, even if it seems small, when they're letting you know that they need you, they are initiating that attachment relationship to you.
So how does the attachment hat work with all the other parenting hats?
So this is actually one of my favorite questions. So I put on multiple hats since we're talking about how all the different hats can kind of work together. Again, the key piece to the attachment hat is all about how you're responding to your child when they need you. As a parent, you're going to teach, you're going to play, you're going to enforce rules, you're going to wear your attachment hat literally a million times a day, all day, every day. How you respond to your children's needs while wearing all the other hats is what's going to help your child develop that attachment relationship to you. Again, the attachment hat is the most important when your child is sick, upset, or hurt. To kind of tie in the other hats into the attachment hat, let's kind of look at a couple examples. So for a child, learning and playing, these two hats can be a little bit frustrating for them, and sometimes your child might get upset and you need to stop teaching or playing, take these hats off for a little while and put your attachment hat on to help them kind of organize their feelings and navigate what they're going through and kind of get them back to a comfortable level to go back to whatever it was that they were doing. Another example is, having limits and rules set for you. That can be really new, it can be confusing, and it can be downright frustrating for a child as well. So, and might cause them to get upset. So again, you might have to take a little bit of a step from your enforcer hat, put it aside, keep it close by, but put it aside for a little while. And again, because their attachment system is activated because they're upset, you're gonna put your attachment hat back on. You can see that all the different hats kind of tie in together and work together to some degree, but the key pieces with the attachment hat are how you respond to your child when their system activates and trying to find that balance. And it's not always easy, but trying to find that balance for when it's necessary to keep your other hats on or to switch out to your attachment hat. Again, it can take some time to learn your child's different signals and needs, but the basic rule for the attachment hat is when your child is sick, upset, or hurt, that is when they need your connection the most. Finally, the co-parenting piece. There's a few pieces to answering this question, and I thought it would be easiest if I actually broke the answer to this question down by answering some of the most frequently asked questions that I get around this very topic. Before I do, I just want to remind you that everything you've learned so far and what you're going to learn in the next couple questions and examples are applicable to parents whether or not you're co-parenting. If you are co-parenting, it doesn't matter. All this information is applicable whether or not you live with your co-parent. So it's all applicable. The only way that this information changes is how you apply it to parenting your child.
So what do all of these hats and attachment have to do with my co-parent?
So first I'll answer the umbrella or the bigger umbrella question of what does this have to do with my co-parent? Like you, your co-parent also wears all these different hats and plays all these different roles, including the attachment hat. So even if your co-parent is present and engaging with your child all the time, or even very rarely, your co-parent is still going to work within these roles and wear these hats to some degree or another when they're with your child.
So will my child have an attachment to myself and the other co-parent?
This is a question that I actually get asked a lot, and it's a really good question, so I'm always happy to answer it. Children can form several attachment relationships throughout their lives, but do tend to have one primary attachment figure. That said, if both parents, whether the parents live together or not, if both are consistently warm and responsive to their child's needs, then that child can absolutely develop an attachment relationship to both parents. On the other hand of that, though, if you or your co-parent are not always consistent with involvement in your child's life, or if when you are present and might not be the most consistent with responding to your child, then it may take longer for your child to learn that they can trust you to keep them safe. In some cases, your child may never be certain that you're who they can go to keep them safe. Again, the key pieces to a secure attachment are that warmth, consistency, and feelings of safety and security.
So what happens if my co-parent is better at wearing certain hats than I am, or that I am better at certain hats?
This is something that's super normal, I think, for everyone, whether you're a parent or not. All people have different strengths and, of course, areas for growth and improvement. For example, some parents might be really good at, setting limits, enforcing rules, while on the other hand, some parents really aren't comfortable with doing this, or it's not their strong suit. On the other hand, you might have a parent who absolutely thrives on being whatever type of playmate their child needs them to be, while the other parent maybe doesn't necessarily even know how to properly play with a child or doesn't even necessarily enjoy playing with a child. That's okay. The important thing to remember is that your child needs you to wear all these different hats at some point, as all of the roles that a parent plays are of equal importance to a child's development. If you're not comfortable wearing one specific hat, it is okay for your child to get the fulfillment of what that role requires from your co-parent. Great thing about that is that on the other side of that, you might also be fulfilling a role or wearing a hat that your co-parent isn't necessarily comfortable with. So sometimes, you get pretty lucky and there's a little bit of a balance there. With that, every parent still absolutely has to wear every hat sometimes, as all of these hats are important parts of connecting with your child in different ways. Your child needs you to wear all of the different hats in order to thrive. If you're not comfortable with a certain hat, it is still essential that you at least consider your attachment hat in these moments. So an example of what I mean by that is, let's say again that you're not great at being the playmate. Your child still needs for you to play with him. And so responding to that need with that acknowledgement and care is still going to send the message that you're there for him, even if playing with him is not necessarily your favorite thing, but still being present to do that and fulfill that role helps keep your child feeling safe and secure because you are doing it, regardless of if it's your favorite or not.
So can I wear my attachment hat at the same time as another hat?
So as a parent, you're gonna switch in and out of all your hats all day, every day. It would be exhausting to wear one hat all day, and it would be equally as exhausting to wear all of your hats at the same time all day as well. Your most important hat is still your attachment hat, as it's all about supporting your child's emotional needs and helping her feel secure. When your child does need for you to put your attachment hat back on, it is pretty important that you put all your other hats aside for a little while. I'm gonna bring them back because I like them, they're colorful. So think about a time that maybe you needed connection or support from your parent when you were upset, and ask yourself if getting a playmate would have made you feel better or understood. Think about another time you were upset, and if someone maybe felt the need to try to teach you something or teach you a valuable lesson in that moment, rather than trying to help you process and understand what you were feeling and experiencing. Would that have left you feeling like your parent cared about what was important to you, or Would it have left you feeling like your needs were met? Probably not, unfortunately. So when your child needs you, they need consistent warm responses to their emotional needs in order to feel safe as they learn to navigate the world around them and even as they're getting to know themselves.
So what happens if my child only goes to the co-parent when they're sick, hurt, or upset?
And what should I do?
Just like we talked about before, these are pretty critical times for when your child's attachment system is activated. A lot of different factors can play into why a child might prefer going to one parent or caregiver for meeting their emotional needs. So one factor to consider for this is that while a child absolutely can have more than one attachment figure, they are still likely to have one primary attachment figure. And it might just be that that person may be the person who is more comfortable or more consistent with wearing their attachment hat. Another factor to consider here is that I had mentioned earlier that how consistent a parent is in being involved in their child's life can also play into how the child attaches to that parent. If one parent comes and goes and is unpredictable in their presence and is also unpredictable in their responding, it's more likely that the child is going to go to the parent who is most accessible most often to meeting their emotional needs. What if my child doesn't come to me or my co-parent, or doesn't even really ever let us know that there's something wrong? This is kind of a challenging piece because it can be really hard to imagine the idea of a child not knowing who's there for them to keep them safe or feeling truly cared for. Sometimes this can mean that neither parent is particularly comfortable wearing the attachment hat, or maybe that both parents are inconsistent in their presence and or in their responding to their child's emotional and attachment needs. If this is something that you're noticing or you are feeling concerned about, or even if you want more information on, consider what I'm going to talk about in the next piece. After that, if things are still a little bit unclear, or even if it is a little bit more clear and you're looking for some support, I am always here at St. Mary's. You can always give me a call or connect with me for more information, and I'm happy to help out however I can. So stay tuned for this next piece for a little bit more on that. What can you do if your child isn't coming to you for help with their emotional needs? Keeping in mind all of the factors that I talked about in the previous section, if your child isn't coming to you to have their needs met, it might be time to ask yourself a few things. The first thing you're going to want to ask yourself, first and foremost, is what are your strengths? What do you do really well as a parent when you're engaging and supporting your child? I can guarantee you there are things that you do well every single day. And when you're kind of weighing through some of the harder stuff, like why your child might not be coming to you for meeting their emotional needs, it's critical that you recognize what you're doing well, because you're doing lots of things just fine. The next thing you want to ask yourself is there a parenting hat that I struggle with more than others, and which one is it? When I'm putting on the hat that I do struggle with, how am I engaging with my child when I wear that hat? Am I supportive? Am I dismissive? Or am I sometimes inconsistent because I'm not always comfortable or uncomfortable when wearing that hat? Most importantly, when you ask yourself that, you also want to ask yourself, how can you overcome this discomfort so that you're consistent and appropriately responsive when your child needs you? The other piece that I wanted to mention is that, again, for the millionth time in this video, it is absolutely okay if you're not comfortable with every single hat that a parent wears on a given day. But it is important that your child knows that all of the people who are looking after them are there to keep them feeling safe and secure. It's not always easy, and there's lots of different reasons why someone might struggle with different hats more than others. Sometimes that comes down to how you were raised. Other times it's not knowing how to respond to different needs. Sometimes it's mental health, physical health, you name it. There's lots of different reasons for why we might be more comfortable or less comfortable with certain parenting hats and parenting roles. That was a whole lot of information about hats and the different parenting roles that both you and your co-parent play any given day. So I do hope that you found the metaphor of connecting hats to different parenting roles helpful, at least a little bit. Like I said, in the attachment work that I do with folks that I see here at the center, I do find it helpful to use the hats. Whenever a parent is about to step into a different role, they kind of just remember, oh, got to change my hat for a quick sec. So hopefully you did find it helpful. I'm sure to some degree or another, you probably found it a little bit silly and hopefully a little bit entertaining as well. If you do have more questions or you're thinking about everything that we talked about today, if there's anything you want to talk about, absolutely feel free to connect with me here at the center or any of our other parenting or attachment counselors. We have a wonderful team. Anyone would be happy to help you out. If you're looking for attachment support specifically, do feel free to give me a call. Again, my name is Dom. Thank you so much for tuning in, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you're having a wonderful summer. Take care.